everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this tutorial I will show you how to create a motion graphics scene using geometry nodes. Click on geometry nodes at the header of the 3D part editor. It's gonna be opening up the geometry nodes workspace. Let's begin with creating our base mesh and instance object. So in this section we will create our base mesh and also spend some time modeling a basic but more interesting instance object and distributing it across our base mesh using the nodes that we have looked at in the previous tutorials. Let's start by creating a plain object which we will use as our base mesh. So first of all we need to delete everything in the scene, so create new Blender project. Also second step is delete all the objects in the scene by pressing A and then pressing X to confirm. Let's create a plane by pressing Shift A. Hover your mouse cursor over to the viewport editor as shown here. Shift A is gonna be showing the add menu. Then click on plane to add the plane to the scene. Scale the plane by pressing S and pressing 10. Click on this tab over there. So by pressing S then 10, it's gonna be set it on money axis, scale X, scale to Y and to Z to scaled to 10. It's always good practice to apply the scale of your mesh. Let's do that now. With the plane selected, press Ctrl A. It's gonna be showing this menu. So press Ctrl A and then select scale. Before we start creating our nodes, let's create our instance object. This will be the main object that we will be using to construct the mod graph scene. This object can also be modified later, so don't spend too much time on it. Create a cube object by pressing Shift A, then add cube to the scene as shown here, and selecting mesh cube, move it away from our plane object by pressing G, then X. Move it away from our plane and dragging the mouse. Let's change the cube slightly so that we have something a bit more interesting. With the cube still selected, press Tab to enter to edit mode. Like this. Make sure you are in face selection mode. Go over click in order to set it to face selection mode, and then select the top and the bottom faces of the cube. With both the top and the bottom faces selected, press I to create inset. Drag it in like this. Let's select these two faces. Then use the shortcut. Alt is gonna be showing up this pop-up menu, extrude faces allow normals. Then drag it inward like this. It's gonna be creating inset faces though. So tab to edit mode, into edit mode like this. Tab to solid mode, object mode as shown here. Then go to add a modifier, add subdivision surface modifier. Set it to simple, then set the level to 3, then also the render to 3 as shown here. Add in subdivision surface modifier will give us more vertices. This means that more instances of our cube object will be distributed across our base mesh. Let's see how to distribute the instance object across our base mesh. Now it's time to distribute our instance object across our base mesh using some basic nodes. Let's do that now. Select the plane again, as shown here in our example. Just let's scale it just a tiny bit in order to see it better. Select the plane again and click on new geometry nodes, like this. So just zoom in just a tiny bit to see it. Then let's create our first node, a point instance. Just like this, hover your mouse cursor over geometry nodes editor, then hit Shift A. This is gonna be showing this add menu, and you have to search for the node to be used, a point instance. Just I'm gonna retype in point instance as shown here. So just drag it. Select point instance and place it just before the group output, like this. Click on the object drop down box and select the cube instance object as shown here. Just we want to select the cube. Your scene should now update and we see multiple cubes instances where our plane was. Now that each instance is placed on a vertex of our plane object, the more vertices, the more instances you will have. So let's go ahead to show you something new. In the next section, we'll learn how to calculate proximity data between an empty object and the position of each instance object. Then this data can be used to create interesting effects. Using an empty object to calculate proximity data. So let me give you some important information to begin with this kind of notes. Using an empty object to calculate proximity data. Let's take a moment to discuss the next few steps. The idea is to calculate the proximity between an empty object in our scene and each of the cube instances. We can then use this proximity data to modify each cube's rotation and any other attribute. For this, we will also be using the vertex weight proximity modifier to calculate the proximity and then save it into a vertex group that we will create. You will discover that there are many different ways to do interesting things using geometry nodes, so never feel that you need to do it certain way. If you can calculate the data that you need, you are on the right track. Experiment and practice. So let's move on. Calculating the proximity. In this section, we will be creating an empty object and using it to calculate proximity data. So let's start by creating an empty object in our scene. Press Shift A and select empty sphere. Go over there, Shift A, then let's select empty, then sphere. It's gonna be adding empty to our scene. So you can choose any shape you want. Scale the empty object by pressing S and moving the mouse until it's comfortable size. S. I think this will be so good enough. Move the empty object to the edge of a cube instances. Grab it and move it like this, G, then X, then grab it to the edge of instances. With the empty object selected, press G and then X and drag the mouse. As mentioned in our tutorial. Next, let's add vertex weight proximity modifier to our plane object.